This is called our long redemptive trek. From about the 1500 CE, Jewish communities lived behind the tall walls and locked gates of the ghetto lifestyle. These weren't necessarily the devastating ghettos of World War II, but the isolated tradition of a people who kept to themselves. They were not active in the greater community of their chosen address, and the greater community wanted nothing to do with the Jewish community back then. This was not a perfect arrangement, but mostly Jews were allowed to be Jewish. Modern Judaism has been the experiment of those walls coming down and those gates being thrown open. Over the course of our modern tradition, starting in the 1500s and culminating to a bunch of Jews congregating for Rosh Hashanah in Alaska, we figured out what it looks like for our people not to be hidden behind tall walls. We have been emancipated. It didn't happen all at once. It didn't happen the same way. But country after country slowly let Jews become citizens. And today I ask the question, what does it mean to be Jewish and a citizen? It's a complex question that comes from our complex history. In 1806, Napoleon asks this very question to the French Jewish community. Do the Jews who are born in France and who are treated as French citizens regard France as their native country? Asks Napoleon. And this is 10 years after the French Revolution, a movement that should have easily seen Jews as emancipated, but struggled to do so. And even though Napoleon was satisfied with how the French Jewish community answered his questions, the French Jewish community endured horrible anti-Semitism that culminated with the Dreyfus Affair in 1894, where a French Jewish artillery captain was purposefully and wrongly convicted of treason. My point is that our path to citizenship did not happen in a straight line, but we got there. When the walls of our ghettos came down, a lot changed for Judaism. No longer were we the tight-knit shtetl of the past, but we became individuals who chose to be Jewish, free to participate in our Judaism, but also free to participate in everything else our citizenship earned us. And this is the way of modernity. We embrace the privileges of citizenship, and yet we have not assimilated. Our Judaism empowers our citizenship rather than our citizenship watering down our Judaism. And we are still a covenantal people with particular values. Our covenant informs our values, which in turn informs our decisions as citizens. The great modern Jewish thinker, Rabbi Eugene Borowitz, once wrote, "Every Jewish generation has a responsibility to every prior generation, as well to all Jews yet to come, to empower the long-range continuity of the covenant. Hence, every decision," continues Rabbi Borowitz, "requires us to consider whether a given action lends endurance to our people for its long, redemptive trek." In other words, the advantage of emancipation is that we get to choose our long, redemptive trek. Surviving behind a wall is no longer the future of our people. We get to plan a future for ourselves and plan a future where our children don't have to know fear because of their religion. And yet, still, some of our children experience fear because of our religion. The joy of emancipation can be quickly subdued by the reality of hate. Citizenship is a gift given to us by a government, but not necessarily ratified by its people. And thus we find ourselves as citizens protecting our Judaism. And I've come to believe we protect our Judaism by projecting our values. Let us consider the value of Kiddush Hashem. Kiddush Hashem means sanctifying God's name, and it's the idea that Jews should act in the ways that always sanctify God's name among non-Jewish people. This value comes from millennia of experience with Jewish persecution. Historically, we're not well regarded by peoples, kingdoms, and nations. And so we must not make our situation harder by acting poorly around non-Jewish folks. Instead, we must endeavor to act the most upright, the most courteous, the most rule-abiding, so that as a covenantal people, we represent Adonai as paragons of virtue. Or, said in another way, and quoting a Yiddish maxim, you must love your neighbor even when he plays the trombone. But I believe being a Jewish citizen is more than acting upright among our non-Jewish peers and colleagues. Our long redemptive trek is taking our tradition and living by its message. It's our job as citizen Jewry to make our world a better place. Modern Jewish thinker Rabbi Mordechai Kaplan once wrote, "The purpose of Jewish existence is to be a people in the image of God. The meaning of Jewish existence is to foster ourselves as Jews and reawaken in the rest of the world a sense of moral responsibility in action." And I believe a universal truth of Judaism is that we are a tradition of doing, a religion of action. We protect our religion by projecting our values, and we project our values by acting on them. And we are empowered, motivated, and inspired by our covenant with Adonai. Professor Emmanuel Goldsmith, while commentating on Rabbi Mordechai Kaplan, so it's a commentary of a commentary here, God is the power, force, process, dimension, or energy by means of which people are motivated to exercise their rights, pursue their responsibilities, and strive to be at peace with themselves, with nature, and with other people. And this is what I believe citizenship looks like. With the walls of our ghetto down, we can exercise our rights, we can pursue our responsibilities, and we can strive for peace. This is our long redemptive trek. But of course, while Professor Goldsmith explains what we can now do, what he doesn't divulge is how we exercise our rights, how we pursue our responsibilities, and how we strive for peace. Inspiration for the how can be found in countless places in our tradition. We can draw inspiration from the Torah, where Moses states, justice, justice you shall pursue. We can find inspiration from the book of Isaiah, which states in the first chapter, devote yourselves to justice, aid the wrong, uphold the rights of the orphan, defend the cause of the widow. Or in Jeremiah, which states, but let justice well up like waters, righteousness like an unfailing stream. And perhaps you're noticing a theme. Modern Jewish citizenry has always been about pursuing social justice. It's the very foundation of the Reform movement. The eighth principle of the 1885 Pittsburgh Platform, a foundational reform document, states, in full accordance with the spirit of the Mosaic legislation, which strives to regulate the relations between rich and poor, we deem it our duty to participate in the great task of modern times, to solve on the basis of justice and righteousness the problems presented by this contrast and evils of the present organization of society. This is our inheritance, our responsibility, our action, our pursuit of peace. We are called to civic engagement because we've signed a covenant with Adonai. The founding director of the Religious Action Center, Rabbi Richard Hirsch, once wrote, ethics requires action, and action involves risk, but social actions will be a stimulus for the renewal of tradition. In other words, social justice is the long, redemptive trek of our people. When the walls of the ghetto were up, our singular mission was to survive, to practice our tradition. Back then, as long as we could access food, water, safety, and shelter, we could be Jewish. While it was by no means a simple to survive the ghetto lifestyle, there was not much complexity back then in how Jewish communities regard their non-Jewish neighbors. Emancipation, while freeing us from a survival mentality, also drove us toward complex relationships with our neighbors. We are American, and yet being Jewish makes us a minority in the USA. But the great American experiment and experience is that even as a minority, we are entitled to the same inalienable rights as everyone else. But the laws, rules, cultures, and standards of our society are always shifting, sometimes slow, and other times with lightning speed. And the best way for our community to manage these changes is to continue to hike on our long, redemptive trek, to project our values, not just Kiddush Hashem, but Tikkun Olam, repairing the world, to pursue justice and our responsibilities, to exercise our rights, and to strive for peace. I'll conclude with a quote from the Elenu, which we're about to read in a few moments, which states, "Cause light to go forth over all the lands between the seas, and light up the universe with the joy of wholeness, of freedom, and of peace." Thank you. And part 2 of this sermon will be read or delivered at Kol Nidre, so stay tuned.